We ended up pulling both chassis out of the Dumont to reduce the weight, but even so, it was still quite a beast to get up here. So here is the empty cabinet. Now before I reassemble it, I want to do a few things. One is I want to turn it on its side and see what kind of feet it's got underneath. Probably metal caps. And I have hardwood floor, so I want to get some felt pads down there. And I also want to check the condition of it. I noticed a little bit of loose veneer here, so I want to glue that down before it starts tearing off. And then I'll clean it up a little bit. I spread out a blanket and carefully tipped the cabinet on its side, so now I can get at the bottom. And as I suspected, it's got those nasty metal feet which will gouge up my floor, so I'll put a felt pad over each of these. And here's a better look at the bad side of the set. For the most part, although it looks terrible, it's just the finish that's gouged up. It doesn't really go deep into the veneer. This perhaps is the worst of it. And maybe I can steam that out. I don't know. And a little bit of separation on the veneer here and there. I'll glue that down. And I noticed this is kind of unusual. The underlying wood is not plywood. It's solid wood. And it's built up of individual pieces. Of varying widths too, which is I find even more unusual. So here we got a piece about this wide. Over here is a piece this wide. And because they're individual pieces of wood, that's why it's split here. I mean, it's not really split. The two pieces of wood are just kind of separated. That would account certainly for the weight of this thing. I don't know why they didn't use plywood, but you know, it is what it is. Certainly the base here is big old, by 2x2, 2.5 by 2.5, and then they scalloped out the one edge. You can see that's split too. Or perhaps they glued. No, the rings are two. It couldn't be two pieces glued together because the rings are matching it perfectly. I guess I can try to glue and clamp that. I don't know. The split doesn't go too far, and it seems to be pretty stable. And eventually I'll touch this up here and there, I suppose, like spraying some new black lacquer along the bottom. I don't think would ruin the value of the piece any or detract from its, from its value by altering the finish a little bit. And the one I do know of in private hands that was restored was refinished, and I think the one at the Early Television Foundation may be refinished too. So, it's not unheard of. As for the upper chassis, it actually was easier to get out than I realized at first because the CRT is firmly mounted to it, so you just slide the whole thing out as one big unit. So I'm still curious about the CRT. I have not found any model or any manufacturer's marking, just nothing on it. So I'll clean it up a bit because it's still filthy, and I'll move the ion trap a little bit and see if I can make out any indication. Because I want to test it. I'm not entirely sure what model it actually is. If I can't find any markings, I'll just go with the generic 12JP4 settings, I suppose, and see what I get. I have not peeked underneath the chassis yet. But we're going to look from the top here. Obviously a whole mess of tubes, and I like these little stubby electrolytics all over. I'm used to them being much taller and multi-section. I don't know if these are just individual caps or if there are multiple suctions in here. They can't be too large a value or to have too many suctions because they just aren't that big. Another neat thing I discovered is that this tuning dial is just the AM radio. So that's the AM radio tuning cap, and that is an S meter. I think there might be a tuning eye on the other side, or maybe not. I know later models with this induct tuner had tuning eyes, but it's possible this just has the S meter. for a tuning strength indicator. Just put a little 6H6 down in there. There's a whole bunch of octal tubes, probably all 6SN7s. Yep. In this, these dual 807s here, I'm pretty sure this drives the horizontal winding on the yoke. And this big jobber, I'm not sure. That's probably the vertical output transformer. This is a little bit too beefy. And this, I think, is a horizontal output transformer. This, maybe it's a dedicated filament supply transformer? Or a choke? I don't know, but because obviously there's the other chassis that has the big beefy power supply on it. 5U4 rectifiers and all that. I do have service info for this. I've only looked at it briefly. I'll have to dig it out and look at it in more detail and figure out exactly what's going on in this set. I did a little cleaning on the CRT, and lo and behold, I found the label. It is the original Dumont, and it turns out it's a 12RP4. I have never heard of a 12RP4. I don't know anything about it. I'm going to have to look up on the internet and see what the specs might be for it. I have the cabinet back upright, and now what I'm focusing on is cleaning it so I can start putting this thing back together. And what I'm doing right now is I took out the faceplate, the safety glass for cleaning, and I guess this is just a hallmark of Dumont that it's just ridiculous. Huge piece of rubber, weighs, I don't know, 3 pounds or so, just massive gasket, and the safety glass is quite thick too. And as I say safety glass, so sure it actually is, because I don't see any laminations. Typically TV safety glass from this era, you can pretty clearly see there's like a sheet of plastic in between 2 sheets of glass. I don't see that here. So just be a big old piece of plate glass. Of course, this might not be the original either. This may just be a piece of glass somebody put in there as a replacement. I don't know, but I'll certainly be careful. The whole idea behind this is that if the CRT implodes, this should protect you. And check out my hand, you can see how dirty this has gotten. Both the rubber and the glass. So when I get that cleaned up and then clean up these 2 dial covers here, and I think this set will look a whole lot better when I put it back together. And of course I'll continue cleaning up the chassis and the CRT. Get this thing looking real nice. I've done a bit of cleaning on the chassis and the CRT and the tubes and the controls. See, everything was quite filthy. It's starting to look a lot better now. I looked up the 12RP4 and I couldn't find data for it anywhere other than somebody saying that it's interchangeable with the 12QP4, which is the one I picked up recently off eBay and had to repair the mangled pins and put a new base on it. So I have checked the filament in this with an ohm meter, and shortly I'll take out my CRT tester and see how it tests. But worst case scenario, if it's bad, I believe I have a CRT I could pop right in here and it would work just fine. I cleaned up the controls a bit. So this is for the AM radio. It's operating a lot more smoothly now, and can read the dial more clearly. And you can see the S meter behind there. And this side is a little more interesting. Concentric rings that rotate at different rates. One is for TV and one is for FM radio. So a little bit more cleaning and I will pop this back into the cabinet. Oh, and I want to try to take a peek underneath the chassis. I felt underneath it briefly earlier and it feels like there's a piece of metal covering the entire thing. I'm hoping it will come off without too much difficulty. who also, there was a strip down here showing the controls and partially fell off, and this side's about to fall off. The old adhesive is just disintegrating. I don't know if this is the original to the set. Probably is, but you never know. Somebody could have just put this on at any point in time. I guess I'll throw this on my flatbed scanner to preserve it and be able to reproduce it if need be. Looks like they just stuck this on there and then slapped like some shellac or something over it, and it's not adhering to the metal very well anymore. The chassis is indeed completely enclosed by a heavy sheet of steel. I've removed every screw except as the last one. So, have we got? Oh man. Looks like there was a critter living in here. I see nuts. A little bit of bedding material. I hope it doesn't mean that some of the wiring got chewed up. I love these controls. They extend all the way from here, all the way to the back. Oh, some of these caps have gone. Like a Tootsie Roll Pop or something, and just oozed right out of that guy. And looks like some of these others aren't far behind. Never liked these. Look like they're the sealed type brand. Kind of a gooey wax cylinder and just a thin paper wrapper around it. Unlike these, which are cardboard tubes. Not that the other one's any more reliable than the other, but at least these are easy to restuff. These ones with the thin paper label, you melt the wax and the paper just falls apart, so tough to do anything with. Oh man, I really hope that's okay. Oh good, it's sealed on the bottom. There's a horizontal output transformer. Here's a little more light on this situation. So, let's see, we've got what looks to be some carpeting and bits of nuts. Doesn't look like the wire's been chewed on though. The coils, that's my big fear. So it looks to be in decent shape, and it's definitely very different from any TV I've worked on before. Maybe the next closest thing will be the Helicrafters I did quite a while ago, just in terms of it's laid out more like a World War II radio or something than a commercial TV. Alright, so I'll finish cleaning out some of these nuts and whatever, put the bottom back on, slide this back into the set, and then I want to take a look at the other chassis. I just slid the top chassis back into the cabinet, which actually is fairly easy to do, other than the weight, because it has a couple rails, and it just kind of guides it right in, all the controls line up and everything, no fidgeting around. What I'm doing now is taking some lemon oil furniture polish and going around the front, and it's helping quite a bit. You can see the areas where I haven't done yet, how dull and cruddy they look. So not only does this put a nice layer of oil on the wood, but it's also cleaning some of the dirt and crud off of it. Now when it comes to the knobs, I noticed on some of them there's some faint printing. For example, I believe this says on, off, which means probably goes here. So I'm pretty sure that this is on-off volume. And this one can't read anything. Nothing, and this one says contrast. So it'll be an interesting challenge to figure these out. Now I do know that one other guy that won one of these sets is a Video Karma member. So maybe when he gets his, he'll post some photos, and maybe his knobs are in better shape. And this one says, I believe, AM, FM, and maybe Tele or something. Looks like TEL, and then I don't know. But anyways, that goes here for the mode switch. And by the way, this thing draws an immense amount of power, as you might imagine. Oh, switch works nice. I'll pull out the exact specs, but it's on the order of something like 400 watts for the TV. It's like 3 point something amps. It's just ludicrous. What's that? Paint fluck, I think. Nope. Actually, a little ding in the finish. Oh well. Dumont logo is in pretty good shape. So I'll keep going over this with lemon oil, and I notice there's one little screw here missing. At first I was wondering why would there be a screw missing, and then once I pulled the chassis out, oh yeah, it's a whole row of controls down in here. So if you wanted to adjust the focus or something, you would have to, or the horizontal vertical hold, you have to take this whole panel off. I know it's a very well engineered set, so I'm guessing you wouldn't have to adjust those very often, because if you did, it'd be quite irritating, probably to the point where you would just leave this off so you can get at those controls more easily. This old finish is polishing up really nice with just some lemon oil. So it sure looks to me like all I'll be doing is touching up around this picture frame part. I'm not sure if it detaches or not. And even then, the vast majority of it's fine. It's just this area down here. So try to blend something in, touch it up, you know, with a brush and toner lacquer or some a little touch-up kit I've got. We'll see. I also took off the control panel. It's a little surprised at how thin and delicate it is. I'm glad that it's survived all this time intact. And now I can clearly see that those labels are original. So I'll do what I can to preserve and glue them back on, because without them you're not going to know what all those controls do. So that leaves the sides, which, you know, they already talked about, are a bit rough. This one's not too bad. This one, we'll see. I know the lighting's not so good now. But. And then there's the very base, which I can mask off the whole rest of the side and spray that with some black lacquer, no problem. Alright, so I'm just going to reattach this and then finally pull in the lower power chassis and take a closer look at that. Oh, and I mentioned earlier that big transformer on the upper chassis. I was wondering what it was for. That is a filament transformer. After the lemon oil started to dry out, the finish was looking a little funky, so I decided I would go with this Howard's Feed and Wax, which is a combination of oil and wax. I think just oil by itself wasn't going to cut it, so just let it sit 20 minutes and then buff it out. So while I'm waiting for that, how about we test the CRT finally? So I couldn't find any data on a 12 RP4 online, but it is in my tube chart here. You can see what the other 12s, the 12 JP4, KP4, LP4, QP4, SP4, and you can see settings are identical across the board for all of them. So that's why they're fairly interchangeable. There's some difference in the neck length and no ion trap, single, dual, but electrically they're basically all the same. So here we go. Or not, because my power strip is not turned on. Right. Alright. I'll just say I tested this with an ohm meter. So fairly sure we get a filament light, and we do. Turn up the juice a little bit more. There we go, it's glowing. Right there. Alrighty. So it's not gassy and it keeps glowing. Sharps. And not much. Oh, the emissions are good. Yet again, when I put the bias on 52, the cutoff control isn't very responsive. I did calibrate this thing a while ago, went through all the procedures and checked the cutoff bias voltage ranges, and everything seemed to be working right, but more often than not, when I put it on negative 52, I really don't get any cutoff control. But if I knock it down to minus 36, that's a little weak too. Huh. Well, we do have emissions, and there's some cutoff control. And it's only been on for a minute or two, so we'll let this cook for a while, but that's fantastic. So even though I do have the 12 QP4 in reserve, looks at least, the preliminary indications are I won't need it. I just remember there's something I've been meaning to mention for a while now about the CR70 and these bias ranges. These only affect when you're doing the cutoff test. So when I flip to emissions, it changes bias, nothing happens. So I don't want anybody to think that when I'm testing the CRT and I drop it from minus 52 to minus 36, I'm like artificially inflating the emissions readings. No, when you do emissions, it internally sets it to the proper bias, and this control does nothing. Here it is the next day, and we've got some better lighting, so here's another look at the cabinet after applying the Howard's beeswax and orange oil. I think it's looking a whole lot better. And I'm especially glad now that this has the original finish, because the only other two examples I know of that are documented online have been refinished. And in particular, the one at the Early Television Foundation, I think they got it a little bit wrong. I mean, it looks fine, but on theirs, the mahogany's all the same color. But I can see on the original now that the sides are a little bit darker than the center. And maybe theirs is too, and in one photo they have, maybe the lighting just wasn't so great. I don't know. But this is in fine condition. Just a little bit of touch-up work to do here, and that'll be that. Alright, so finally, the power supply. Now, I am no expert by any means on Dumont power supplies. What I know is from briefly looking at the server's info and from what I've read about other restoration diaries on Dumonts with somewhat similar power supplies. Right away I can tell you one thing, it's really friggin' heavy. Even though there's a filament transformer on the main chassis, this still has plenty of heft to it. Here's the umbilical that connects to the upper chassis. And here is the high voltage lead. So yeah, there's no flyback in this set. The high voltage is generated way down on the bottom power supply. And here's the crunchy original power cord. We'll not be able to salvage that, unfortunately. So I believe inside here is where the high voltage comes from. Yeah, that's where the lead's coming out of. Now this is a fairly lethal high voltage power supply. In more modern sets they have flybacks that are high frequency, low current, and it may hurt a little, but it's probably not going to kill you. This could kill you. I'll pull out the schematic and show you why. So that's one unusual feature, but there are others. Like you may notice this oil-filled cap here and these two huge transformers here. I think this has a CVT type of power transformer. Either that or this cap is there to stabilize the secondary. I'm not entirely sure. A CVT is like constant voltage. I think it's constant voltage transformer, like a SOLA type transformer. If that is that way, and I'm not saying it is, I think it might be. The transformer works in conjunction with the cap to compensate for variations in the line voltage to produce a constant output. This is also a regulated power supply, or at least the high voltage is. On the schematic, they showed a ridiculous voltage divider of a 180 mega ohm resistor, which was comprised of something like 12, 18 or 12, 16 mega ohm resistors in series or something like that, tied into this guy, which is, I believe, a 0C3 gas regulator. So this has a noble gas in it, and it will ionize and keep the voltage across a constant, very similar to the way a Zener diode works. And that's part of the feedback circuit in here to produce a constant output voltage. In here, there should be another 807 tube and a transformer and all those high voltage resistors and all kinds of craziness. I'm curious to see what all is in there. Now, on this side, we've got this, which is a conventional looking power transformer. We got this, which is kind of an oddball power transformer, which I think might be for the high voltage. I'm not positive. And then there's this massive box, which I'm not quite sure what it is. It might be another power transformer. I know it's very heavy. And then just a few filter caps. This should be another 5U4. There are 3 5U4 rectifiers in here. And my buddy that delivered the set said that it was broken, so it's just gone. Also noticed some writing around here. Quite often the service tech should write the name of the set's owner down there. Let's see, well, that's not a good sign. Does that say... Oh, Primrose Ave. For a second there, I thought it said Primary Die or something like that, but no. It says Mitch Primrose Avenue. And, alright, so... Turn off power for moving cover. Well, that's already taken care of. Alright, took a peek underneath. And I can tell you there's not much to see. I don't want to crush any cables. Oh, there's a fuse. Nice. If I flip it this way, it'll crush some cables. This way, it'll crush cables. This way, it'll crush the pilot light. So I think the way to do it is to flip it up this way. Alright, here is under the chassis, and as we can see, not a whole lot. Looks pretty clean though. Capacitors have seen better days. Will get replaced, but not a whole lot of resistors or other components. Little guy here. Now, one of the other notable things about this supply is this. It's a relay. I think all the early Dumonts have that. That is there to only apply, I think, B plus to the rest of the set when it's stabilized. In other words, while the 5U4s are powering up and that this will keep out power. Because often when you first turn on a TV set or a radio, if you monitor that B plus voltage, it shoots way up. Then as the other tubes in the set warm up and start drawing current, it comes way down. Like it might jump up to 550, 600 volts, and then it later settles down to maybe 375 or 400. That's what that's for. Also rather often bad, but we will keep our fingers crossed. I know there are various substitutes that guys have come up with, so we shall see. Alright, so next thing I want to do is pop open this high voltage cover. See what's in there. Okay, I took off the 4 screws that hold this on. There. are the dividers. They're 15 mega ohms. That's the value I was trying to remember. There's the 807 rectifier, 6S and 7. I think this oscillates, drives this. You use this huge divider here to provide feedback to this guy, and it automatically shifts either the frequency or the output amplitude to provide a constant output voltage. And it has a high voltage oscillator coil. So it doesn't, I was a little incorrect. I thought that this might be like a 10,000 volt secondary transformer. But no, this is the oscillator here. So there'll be a primary winding down around the bottom in there. And then huge ratio of primary to secondary turns. These are the same in like the 7-inch electrostatic sets that I've worked on in the past, like the Hallicrafters 506, Motorola VT71s, the Admiral 19A1, but this is on a bit different scale. A few more pancake coils than those electrostatic sets. So not only are there a whole bunch of resistors on this side, there's a whole bunch on the other side too. So that is that. I'm going to go take a quick look at the schematic and try to see if I can suss out what each of these three massive transformers is for. Assuming this even is a transformer. Either that or it could be one massive capacitor block, but I think it's a transformer. Luckily, I just so happen to have the original Dumont factory service data. And here is the RA-102. It's not the earliest. There's actually an RA-101, which is a pretty cool set too, but this is what I've got. Alright, so let's see. There's the power supply. Might be on a separate schematic. Yeah, here we go. Alright. So there's the AC in. There's one big ass transformer. That's probably what that huge box is. 6.3, 1.5 amp, 6 volts to 6 amps, high voltage secondary, no current specified, and 5 volts at 3 amps for rectifier tubes. Doesn't seem like enough. Maybe I thought 5V4 is for 1.5 amps, maybe it's only 1 amp each. Or no, they draw 3 amps each, that's right. Oh, I see, that's 5 volts at 6 amps. I thought it was 6 volts. Alright, so that's the secondary for 2 of the 5U4s. These two guys in parallel. And then this guy has its own 5 volt at 3 amp. So we got 45 watts just for these 3 tubes. Alright, here's the high voltage. So there's the oscillator. There's that high voltage rectifier, or gas regulator. There's that 180 mega ohm resistor. I was talking about 12 times 15 meg. There's 10,000 volts out to the CRT. There's the high voltage rectifier. And there's the 807 that drives the high voltage coil. And you see they have a controller. I assume you adjust that for the right output voltage. Some of those other things must be a choke, so maybe that guy's a choke. So we got one huge power transformer here. That's probably the huge black box. And then here we get an 8 Henry 275 milliamp choke. It's got to be one of those two guys. And I'm not sure about the other one. It might be what they're calling T1 here. Hard to say. I think T2 is clearly the high voltage coil. I'm not sure what T1 is. Oh, I could trace out the wiring. Anyways, there's a look at the power supply, which is rather intimidating to me. The main chassis may be complex and have a lot of stuff, but it's nothing I haven't dealt with before. Just a bunch of paper caps, basically, you know, and carbon comp resistors and so on. But when it comes to this stuff, oh yeah, and let's see if we can find that oil filtered cap on here. Oil filled cap, rather. Oh, I see. There's two. Well, both those things might be chokes. So I see there's another huge choke here, 12 Henry. 8 and 12 Henry, that's at that current rating. Those are pretty hefty chokes there. But a huge choke allows you to use smaller filter caps. So you just got a 40 and a 40 and a 10. So I guess they decided to go with huge chokes rather than a lot of electrolytics. Which is fine with me. One thing that's going to be fun to track down, though, is I've noticed almost all the electrolytics are rated for 475, or in this case 600, so I'm going to track down some Sprague atoms or something. Actually, I was already doing a little bit of research online and saw that Rubicon makes a really nice 10 microfarad, 600 volt, 105 degrees Celsius rated long life cap. Can't find anybody in the States that sells them. DigiKey has them listed, but you have to buy a minimum quantity of 1,000, and at that quantity they're only something like 55 cents each or 75, which would be fantastic. Only place I can sell them that actually has them in stock is in the UK, and they don't ship internationally. So, and I found a few places selling Sprague atoms where they want between 10 and 20 bucks each, and I know I'm going to need about a dozen total for this set, which I'm willing to do if I have to, because this set is well worth it, but I'd rather go with the Rubicons if at all possible. So if anybody knows where I can get some Rubicon 600 volt electrolytics, please let me know. Alright, so where's that oil cap? Oh, you know what? That might be it. That might not be an electrolytic. Well, they do show it being polarized. Yes, this is, in fact, the 10 microfarad 600 volt cap made by Sprague. I think it's non-polarized, oil-filled. Hopefully still good. And so what is it used for? Goes to a tap on the secondary. Goes to the main plug on one side, and the other side goes to a relay contact, so that might have something to do with the relay delay. I'm a little confused about the relay because I do have one in some other sets, like the Stromberg-Carlson TV12. But in those sets, there's a tube attached to it, a 6AL5. And they use that as a sort of a slow start because they wait for that tube to warm up enough before it kicks the relay on. In this, I'm not sure what provides the delay, other than maybe that capacitor. In other words, it takes time for that to charge up, and until it does, it doesn't trip the relay. I don't know. Speculation at this point. Well, the other thing that gets me a little nervous is there is not exactly extensive service data on this chassis. We've got like, what, 3 pages here? So we've got this page, and this page, and this, and that is it. And a schematic, a parts list, and very brief alignment instructions. It's also in Riders Volume 2, but that's basically just a reprint of this. It might be a little bit more info, and I think that is all that I'm ever going to find on this set. So I will have to study this and compare it to what I have very carefully. I can ask around. I know at least one other guy bought one at the auction. Well, 2 other guys did. There were 3 of these sets total at the auction. I know the guy that got the first one is a Video Karma member, and then obviously I got the second one, and the third one went to a guy who also bought the pre-war sets. I think he might have been affiliated with a museum or something, so pretty good chance we'll never hear from him again. And then they have one at the Early TV Foundation, but I don't know if it works or not. From the photos they posted, it doesn't look like it's been restored electrically. So in other words, I might be on my own with this set. Oh no, I've reattached the knob so you can see how cool this thing is when you're tuning it. And imagine that all being lit up. And not quite as interesting, but I imagine when that meter is illuminated and the needle's moving as you turn around, it's pretty cool. Alright, I guess that's going to be it for now on this set. It'll probably be a while before I get to it because I'm going to have to assemble the parts, study the schematic, and that. And if any of these critical components are burned out, that could be a very long adventure to track them down. And so before I dive into this, expect to see videos on all the other sets I got coming up in the near future. And I want to get back to my outstanding projects, of course. So that is going to be it for now. Hope you enjoyed this look at the items I got in the East Coast auction.
Focus it on us for a few minutes.
You want to be the star? You want to be included? I don't care.
You can be Vanna. Hi, my name's Dave, and this is Will, and we've just assisted in the unloading of all of these TVs that you're about to see.